Welcome into Matchweek. I am Will West. That's Chris Carroll. What we do is give you the top talking points in the world of association football, or soccer, as we call it here in the States, every single Monday. Final show of the season as we get ready for the summer, and then we'll give you a little bit of content in the summer as we get ready for next year. But Chris, this thing we all expected to happen. Manchester City win the Premier League. Now Manchester City's won the FA Cup, and we're just waiting on the Champions League final at this point to see if they can win the treble.
I think it's the inevitable that's going to happen this year. It's just looking good for them. But incidentally, what a great season! I don't know about you. I've heard people say that they've been a bit disappointed in this season, but I think it's been a fantastic season with the champions, the race for the champions going right to the wire, pretty much. But a couple of weeks, and then relegation. That battle went to the sort of final minutes of the season. So I think it's been a really good season with a lot of clubs involved in relegation and top European spots. So, but City come good, and I'd really like them to do this treble.
Well, why is that? So, as a dyed-in-the-wool EPL fan, why would you? What is it about this City team that you'd like to see do the treble? Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm just rooting for the underdog and rooting for chaos at this point.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's because it's not one of the traditional big six. And I've been around a long time watching the Premier League, or what was the Premier League, since the 70s as a kid. And Man City were just one of those regular teams, like your Wolves, Wolves fan, being from Wolverhampton. It was just one of those teams. And they're not a Liverpool, they're not a Man United, who were back then the big two, or always two of the big two. Chelsea were there or thereabouts. Leeds were there or thereabouts at the time. They were the big guys in the 70s, and City weren't. They had their minor days, with League Cups and FA Cup, 69, I think, in the FA Cup. So I know they've had a lot of help along the way, but so have a lot of other teams had big investments, and I just like the way they've done it. To me, they haven't tarnished. I know they've got this financial stuff that's hanging over them, but they've not. There's been a lot of mud flying around and nothing's stuck to them yet. I just like the way they've done it. They don't come across as big heads and all that. And so, yeah, it's just a good feel for me. I just like them. I just like the other half of Manchester to do the treble as well.
So for me, the reason this season's been so great is we had great competition at every level, right? To see at the top, can Manchester City catch Arsenal? And of course, they finally did within the top four, and especially to get some kind of new blood or newer blood for those of us in the States we've only been watching the Premier League for 10 years now. To see Newcastle make the top four, that's fantastic. To see Brighton be able to make Europe, that's incredible as well. And then the relegation battle was a lot of fun. And even if you want to go Champions League, I don't know if people are aware of this that are watching us outside the States. Not a lot of, like, in America, it's the EPL and nothing, right? Not even the MLS. It's EPL 1, drop off, Champions League 2, MLS 3, but we don't think of Serie A. Like, we don't. Like, it's just not something that's considered. It's on a streaming service here that not very many people have. So it doesn't get a lot of coverage. Maybe Bundesliga even is a bigger deal because ESPN has the rights to it than Serie A is. So to see two Serie A teams in the UCL semifinals, I thought was a lot of fun. And so I think this season has just been fantastic in all levels of competition. And even the FA Cup ends up being a Manchester derby. So any and every, it seemed like, competition that we had was incredibly competitive, and it was hard fought. And it's been a really, really fun year.
Yeah, it's been interesting, hasn't it? Like you say, the Champions League, every competition, it really has. And the Premier League, with so many stories like Brighton and Bournemouth are everybody's favourites to go down. Brighton,
Villa to have it for Villa to have Brendan Rodgers, and then it falls apart, and then they bring in Unai Emery, and for them to make the run that they did was incredibly compelling all year long.
Yeah, it really was, and there are 9 clubs that at one time or another could have been relegated or in relegation trouble. You go halfway up the table, and all those, there's a lot of teams that were involved in that relegation battle, and yeah, so it's been fun. Likewise at the top, with Fulham doing well and they're doing the best they've done, Brighton doing the best that they've done, Bournemouth. It's been and some crazy results. We always and always did on the radio show, try and predict the scores and who was going to score and the upset of the week, and we're just blown out. I was miles away this season on predicting anything like that. Yeah, really crazy scores.
All right, so why don't we start it off by going with the EPL awards, the awards for the year. So let's start it off, and maybe this ends up being incredibly easy for you. So if you want to say that, I mean, would we both agree Erling Haaland is your player of the year? Is there someone you'd like to mention outside of Erling Haaland that you said, okay, if we remove Erling Haaland from the equation with this record-breaking season, who would be the next person that you would say is the Premier League player of the year?
It'd be one or two for me. It'd be either his teammate Gundogan, who's been unbelievable, especially towards the back end of the season. What a captain he is! He just quietly gets on with it. Talk about not being Billy Big Shot. He's just unbelievable. And the other guy is another Norwegian, Odegaard of Arsenal. He'd be my other guy. So two Norwegians. I mean, when was the last time Norway had two fantastic players like that? I don't know. And I thought, oh crikey, they're looking good for 3 years' time. Who else they got? And I didn't really recognize too many other names with them in that team. But that Norwegian team, if they had a few more like them, they could be pushing. But yeah, Haaland has got to be player of the year for me, and those two that I mentioned would be normal season right up there.
I would say Kevin De Bruyne is the other guy. I'll go with Haaland's teammate. I mean, there's 16 assists on the season and just everything. It's again, when he's on the pitch, it just feels like this guy's a horror movie villain. And if you're a fan of the opposing team, you know what's coming. You know that De Bruyne is going to make a play at some point.
It's inevitable.
And it's inevitable. You're just waiting for it all to happen. And so for that's why I would say maybe it's Kevin De Bruyne, and part of that might be that I am absolutely terrified of him as a Spurs fan. Manager of the year.
Manager. Well, we mentioned Villa, and again, there's been so many managers. It's easy to go with Pep, and he's got a claim. But there's a number of managers who got a great claim on. There's a difference between having a Man City to manage and then having a Villa to manage who are in relegation trouble. He took the same squad Unai Emery, Gerrard had, and they've qualified for Europe for the first time since 2010, I believe. So for me, Unai Emery, because he's had to manage, and he's used the same players that Gerrard had, and what a season he's had for Villa. So yeah, he's my manager of the year, Unai Emery.
Yeah, I'll actually say it's Mikel Arteta, because if you would have said, given the scenario where Arsenal challenges to win the Premier League title, I would not have said that they were running away with it for they had to lead for the majority of until the last month of the season. I wouldn't have thought that was going to happen, but I would have said, well, Eddie Nketiah comes good, and so does Bukayo Saka, and those two guys are unstoppable. Well, it never happened with Nketiah. I mean, really, they still haven't found the guy to replace Aubameyang up front, and yet somehow, some way, with guys like Odegaard, with Bukayo Saka has been just unbelievable. But for him to turn around Granit Xhaka and some of the other guys that we've watched Arsenal fans boo off of the pitch in heartbreaking losses, and he's turned these guys into heroes. I think Mikel Arteta, there's not enough that can be said about him. And you're right, there are different ways, man management versus ego management versus player development, all of those things. It would be, we're probably remiss to not bring Pep Guardiola's name up in this because of the job that he's done, considering he's most likely going to win the treble this year. But when I look at Arsenal's payroll being almost a third of what Manchester City's is, and they were challenging them up until the final couple of weeks of the season, the job Mikel Arteta did, I have to take my cap off to. As a Spurs fan, I hate to say anything nice about anyone from Arsenal, but Mikel Arteta was unbelievable.
He was, and it's hard to argue against a number of the managers like him. De Zerbi at Brighton, I mean, he's in the running. Even Lopetegui at Wolves. Wolves are bottom of the table at Christmas, and they were safe after three games left to play. Steve Cooper at Forest. Everyone was during this season. At some point, everyone's like, Wolves are nailed on to go down. Forest are nailed on to go down. Villa looking dodgy. Bournemouth are nailed on. Gary O'Neill, what he's done. So there's a lot of those coaches who are in the frame of that could make a claim for manager of the year. And it's a tough call.
And it was also a year for managers just to get fired, right? I mean, in the middle of the season, how many different job changes did we see in the middle of this year? It's just incredible that so many managers were sacked during the year. But some of the guys, you're right, really did a great job once they stepped into those places. And maybe the World Cup break also was probably a weird one this year. And I wonder, for some managers, was it a bit of, did they benefit from it? Other managers, did they struggle because of it? And did it cause a disruption in what they were trying to do? There's one name we haven't mentioned yet, and it was the guy that I probably had next with Mikel Arteta. That's Eddie Howe. I don't think anyone even a year ago would have thought this Newcastle team would finish in the top 4.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely spot on. And again, quietly done. What I like about them, no egos. Haven't bought superstars. They just gelled. He's gelled a team together. They're all playing for each other. They all work hard. They've bought horses for courses. They just know who they need in the right spots. And yeah, he's done fantastic. And you're right. 12 months ago, they were right shambles, weren't they, Newcastle? And look what's happened in a short space of time. So again, I know that people could argue that they've got all this foreign money, but it's becoming a tired argument now, foreign money, because foreign money is all over the place. People have been buying foreign players for years and years, for decades. So it's tired for me now. Everyone's got foreign money, and so that's an old argument. So Newcastle, yeah, done really well. And Eddie Howe, again, another guy, like you say, a shout for manager of the season.
And I think there's a difference, at least there is for me, Chris, between foreign money, you're spending 290 million pounds on your payroll, and foreign money, you're spending 118 million pounds. That's it's not as if they're out spending they're spending in the ballpark with Tottenham and Villa and those clubs. And what they've done is just Eddie Howe's got the most out of his team. He has, and to win different ways, right? Almiron, early on, he was just unstoppable, especially in the month of October. Then we get to the World Cup break, and they come back, and they have to find a different way to win, because it's not like Almiron's going to give you 6 goals every single month, right? So, yeah. I mean, he's not Erling Haaland. So they did find, as they started to fade, Eddie Howe found a different gear for this team and a different way for them to attack. Nick Pope in the back was about as good as anybody could possibly have imagined, and that does help things. But I just look at the job that he did and think, man, I don't know if anybody got their team to gel more and got more out of the players that they had brought in than Eddie Howe did this year. Give me your team of the year.
It's got to be City for me. Manchester City with this treble on the line, and it looks like it's going to happen. I mean, I can't see Inter upsetting them at this point. I think the biggest slip up they could have had, or the biggest opportunity for slipping up, was against Man United, though, because Man United were going to do everything possible not to spoil this treble, because United's the only team that have done it. So yeah, they've been fantastic. I mean, they started slow, but they, like as you always say, they show up at the end, and they're there. And he's tweaked the team as well. They're not just the 5 players that you mentioned. There's Nico Williams has come through now. Palmer's coming through. The Williams, I think he's 18, 17 perhaps. Palmer 21, and Foden, he's sort of one of the older heads now. So they keep this little conveyor belt going. So they got rid of Zinchenko, Jesus, and everyone thought, well, is that what they're going to do with that? Haaland's coming in. Is he going to upset the apple cart a little bit? But they just keep Pep. Again, at the other end of the management scale, fantastic manager. The way he just sort of blends everybody in, made a player out of Stones, or a better player out of John Stones. The way he's an inverted fullback now, pushing into midfield. So yeah, they're unbelievable. They're fantastic to watch. I mean, they really are. So for me, that's City are the team of the year.
I'll say, and look, City probably should be, but I feel like I need to mention another one, and the other one I'll mention is Villa. I think that with it now working with Steven Gerrard, and for them to be able to turn their season around the way that they have under Unai Emery is unbelievable. And it's not something we normally see. It's also, to some extent, a team devoid of stars. Yeah. And especially scoring stars, people that we like to talk about in podcasts and in videos, chats, and things like that. There aren't a lot of guys on that team that you're going to text about unless you're a dyed-in-the-wool Villa fan. So for them to be as good as they have been this year, really just kind of remarkable, the job that they've done there in Birmingham.
It is. And that's a bit, and they're a big club. Villa in the 80s, they won the Champions League. Big history. But since then, not done a great deal, and so it's as a someone from the Midlands, it's good to see the Midlands soccer has gone quiet over the last couple of decades. It's either London or Manchester, in the northwest, Manchester, Liverpool area, or London. Midlands teams, Wolves, West Brom, Villa, Birmingham City. It's all have had been a bit of a slump the last few decades. So yeah, we'll throw Walsall in there as well in the lower leagues. But yeah, it's always good to see Villa. On what Emery's done, like I say, and like you were saying, he's fantastic. With again, no superstars really, just great team spirit and a lot of organization and hard work, and just shows what you can do.
All right, let's go next to top transfer targets, and we'll start out with my guy Harry Kane of Spurs. What do you think happens with Harry Kane this summer?
Tricky one, this one, because you sense that he wouldn't like to go abroad. I don't know why. I don't know the bloke. So, but what you read is he doesn't want to go abroad because Real Madrid are in the frame. They want him. The other team they're talking about is Man United, and you sense that he'd prefer to go there more than Real Madrid. However, Spurs don't want to sell him to another Premier League team. I don't believe. Who knows what Levy's going to pull, but. I could probably, quite honestly, with Harry Kane, I don't know. This happened the same time last year, and I really don't know. Anything could happen, and that's going to be really interesting to watch.
It is, and what's weird is the amount of money seems to have gone up this year, even though he's a year older. Like, and if you haven't seen the reports, kind of here are the reports for what we have so far. Madrid won Harry Kane. Harry Kane would like to stay domestic there in England, and Levy doesn't want to sell him to a domestic rival. So United seem to be the obvious choice. There's also the reports that Levy now wants, last year was 100 million pounds. Madrid may have been willing to match that. Now he wants to start at 200 million pounds to bring Harry Kane in. And at that age, it's just too much to ask for. I would like, tell me about if I'm off on this, and maybe it's because I'm an American and we've only watched Premier League for 10 years. When a guy has given you that kind of service the way that Harry Kane has, you have not surrounded him with enough talent ever at any point in time. The chairman has been a train wreck, and you haven't won silver, and it's not his fault. The guy's been amazing. You'd think you would want to do right by the guy. And if he would like to go, and I get maybe you don't want to sell him to a London club. You're not selling him to Arsenal. But if he wants to go to United, let him go to United. You're going to have to rebuild this thing anyway because Levy's running to the ground. So why not sell him to United? If he wins silver there, okay, good for him. But I just don't understand the idea of if his wishes, when he's been such a good soldier for so long, and when he had the opportunity last summer to have to really make noise and get sent out and force his way out if he wanted to, he didn't do that. He was a good soldier the entire time. I would just like to see Daniel Levy honor his requests, and if he'd like to stay in the EPL, send him to a team in the EPL. But it does seem like if these reports are true, it tells me something about the kind of human being Daniel Levy is. It's just not, I don't respect people who do business that way or act that way or behave that way. And it's a little bit bothersome as a Spurs fan. Beyond all the other stuff that makes Daniel Levy a train wreck, it's bothersome for me as a Spurs fan that you're just going to try to screw Harry Kane on the way out after you screwed him the entire time that he was there. That's bothersome. Now, maybe Kane ends up with Manchester United, and these are all negotiation tactics. Okay, that's fine. But I would say right now, if I was guessing, I think Harry Kane ends up in Madrid. I think that's where I think that is where he ends up, and I don't think Daniel Levy will sell him anywhere domestically.
And I think that'd be terrible. You said honor, and I think the honorable thing for Levy would be to let Kane go wherever he wanted to go. I mean, he's done so much for Spurs, pretty much on his own, especially this season. And last season there was an implication of a gentleman's handshake and on that he could go at the end of this season. But you're talking about a guy's livelihood or life now, aren't you? And he's going to get his money, Levy, wherever he goes. Let the guy go to Man United. Let him win a trophy or two, and it's no skin off Levy's nose. He'll get his money, whether it's Madrid or United. But or Wolves. Wolves will take him. But yeah. But yeah, he should be allowed to go wherever. He's put in his time and he's earned his stripes, and so yeah, he's more than earned the ability to go wherever the right to go wherever he wants to.
One other note for Spurs, I guess Hugo Lloris has said publicly he wants to leave Tottenham this summer. That's most likely going to happen. A lot of people think that David Raya is going to end up being the replacement for him in goal, and I would take that. I mean, that's a pretty, as a Spurs fan, that's a pretty easy transition. Chris, you're a Wolves fan. A lot of transition coming to Wolves this summer.
There is, and I don't know how Wolves get in financial fair play trouble because they always seem to be, even though they don't seem to spend that much money, and they fill out the stadium every week. It's a great, they have great support, and so you think they'd have a bit in the bank to be able to spend, against what they take in, but they're in trouble. And Lopetegui, it's not sounding good now. Lopetegui came in, I think, on a promise of rebuilding over the summer. Now all of a sudden they're in financial FFP trouble. So Wolves can't spend over the summer. So they've got to let a lot of guys go. And Lopetegui's not too thrilled about it. So he was even touted as being Spurs' next manager. Who knows? They've already been down that road once with Nuno. That didn't work out so well. So I'm hoping Lopetegui stays at Wolves. But yeah, Neves. See, Neves, that's a similar thing to Kane, but on a much smaller scale. Neves has joined Wolves when Wolves were in the Championship. So no one at Wolves begrudges Neves a move to a bigger club, and I think Wolves are going to let him go. I think it's going to be Barcelona. That's what the rumors are. But, I think all the Wolves fans and the Wolves owners seem to be wishing him well and letting him go where he wants to go for that Champions League soccer. So yeah, he's going. Traore looks like he's at the end of his contract and he's going. Moutinho's been a good servant. They need a centre forward. I mean, I know I'm kidding about Kane, but someone a quarter as good as Kane would be decent. We need somebody, and Diego Costa's at the end of his contract now, I believe. You were telling me earlier on. So
he's 36. What do you do?
He's heading out, but he's been a great pest for Wolves, and he's just been a nuisance up there and done his part in keeping Wolves up this season. So I like Costa, but yeah, it does need a change up top.
Other big names, look at kind of a rebuild going on in Madrid right now with a number of the older players leaving. We're seeing Eden Hazard and Karim Benzema going to the Saudi League. So, but that's something to pay attention to from an EPL perspective, because what players that have been playing in England are going to end up going to Madrid as they go through this rebuild. One other note, I guess, that I will point out, I saw the report this morning that Manchester City going after Kovacic from Chelsea to be their new center midfielder, because that's what they need in midfield. De Bruyne, Kovacic, Grealish. That's what we're trying to see, right?
Yeah, they're a bit light, aren't they? In midfield at the moment, and he's beefing up a bit. Good move. I like Kovacic. I do. I really like him. I was surprised, though, actually. I didn't think he'd put anybody out. I guess he's cover for Gundogan, but I don't know if he'll get the same goals as Gundogan if Gundogan moves on to where he's going to move on to. But yeah, I mean, they just replace him with somebody else, don't they? And Messi would be decent, wouldn't he? Wonder where he's going to end up.
And the machine just keeps going, right? It's sitting. It does. Pep and his machine just keep mowing everything down that's possibly in their way. All right, finally, top storylines to watch for summer. What's the biggest storyline you're paying attention to this summer?
Well, couple. There's Messi. Where's he going? And Spurs, your Spurs again. Who's going to be manager there? They've been managerless for a while now. The rumor mill is that it's going to be Postecoglou of Celtic. He seems to have done everything that he can at Celtic. He's won their treble, but we've all seen what happened. You don't want to run that down up north of the border in Scotland, but Gerrard did similar. Brendan Rodgers did similar, and it's not really worked out for them. So it insinuates that there's a bit of a gap, they can't take anything for granted just because they've done it in Scotland, even though it is a pressure cooker managing Celtic and Rangers. So yeah, Postecoglou for Spurs possibly. The other one is Messi. Where's he going? That's the big summer story for me, or one of them. And yeah, and all eyes on Kane and where he drops. And then you got your Mason Mounts and your Declan Rices and where they're going to go. It's a shame, really, that you got West Ham's, those teams, your West Ham's, Wolves, and Villas, and the rest, just can't hang on to those stars to hang on to them and add to them, and so they've got a chance of knocking at the door of that top six. Just the money talks, and it's hard to break into that top six. That hopefully Newcastle got a chance. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it'd be great to see Messi join the project for a couple of years at Newcastle because they could afford him, but doubtful.
I will say, for me, the number one thing I'm going to pay attention to probably is the rebuild of Madrid. I think what Ancelotti there is doing, we've seen the same names there for a decade plus. So to see those guys walking away, who replaces them, and what does Ancelotti do there? So, and what players from big clubs right now around Europe decide, okay, yeah, I'll give up what I'm doing right now, and I'll go to Madrid because that is Madrid, right? The next thing will be Chelsea. What do they do with that bloated roster that they have? And their bigger problem, look at teams like Wolves, you know what I mean? Some of the smaller teams that are in the EPL would love to have Chelsea's issues of, oh, well, you have too much talent on your roster, but they do have to be selective because clearly you have a lot of guys who quit this year, laid down, who are really just not even trying. And so you had to figure something out if you're Pochettino of who you're keeping, who you're letting go, who fits in with his system, who was more of a fit for Tuchel or Graham Potter. That's the thing that you're going to have to kind of do with Chelsea. And so I'm interested to see who they sell, who they keep with Chelsea. And then the two guys you just mentioned, Mason Mount, I want to see where he goes. Declan Rice, does he go to Arsenal? Everyone's linked Declan Rice to Arsenal for 3 months. Does that happen? But also for me, what is Arsenal? Because Arsenal's probably a striker away from maybe winning the Premier League next year. So do they stick with Nketiah thinking when he gets healthy, he's going to be unstoppable? Or do they try to find somebody else and maybe send Nketiah somewhere else, or even sit him and say, look, as you get older, maybe you'll end up being the guy, but today you're not the guy. That's going to be really interesting, I think, to see. And who else? What else does Newcastle add? Who else can Villa add? Those are the other things that I'm looking at. And then Luton Town, I've got to see the way that they build this roster, and I'm kind of excited to see what they do. And I think we're all going to be kind of rooting for them when they're not playing our team.
Yeah, you're right. Luton Town, it is watch this space and see how they prepare. I mean, they've got to bring somebody in. I don't know what money they've got to spend. Probably not a great deal, but it's just a fantastic story, that is. And Luton will be looking at your Brightons and your Bournemouths and Fulhams and Wolves and all those clubs that are traditionally not in that traditionally just want to survive, and they'll be thinking if they can do it, then we can do it. And what a story that is! I mean, what an absolute fantastic story going up through the pyramid, and here they are. So yeah, like you say, everybody's favorite second team, unless they're playing your team next year.
Chris, fantastic job this season.
Thanks, Will. You too, mate. Really enjoyed it as ever.
And look, we'll give you some content over the summer, and we will be back next year. This is Match Week.